Hi, Nick Salmon from the Collaborative Learning Network to share with you some insights on what we call furniture whispering. I'm the world's first and only self-certified furniture whisperer, and I thought it would be helpful to share some of this with you because these are things that you can change in your own environment this afternoon or this evening or tomorrow morning. I've spent time in more than 3,000 learning environments around the world looking at how you use time, space, furniture, and technology. And here are a few simple things that I've seen. Around the world of time, oftentimes we're asked to divide the day into very small segments that make it very difficult to do good, deep learning. And so we spend time trying to unpack that and look for ways to aggregate that time into more meaningful chunks of time. There are several images that you'll see here about the various kinds of spaces that we've spent time in, very traditional, very future flexible, all around the world. And then, of course, the furniture. That's the whole point of furniture whispering. And again, we see a wide range of practice from very traditional organization of furniture to very flexible and very varied bits of furniture. And technology we still see deployed in traditional settings like computer labs, but now with the proliferation of one-to-one technology, lots of sharing of technology between educators, between kids, all around the world. So there are kind of 5 basic principles that we've developed, and we'd love to see you implement them. The first one is maybe a little bit challenging to your current practice, and that's called reduce the educator footprint. And if you're in a school that has a planning center where 4 or 5 adults work together, then this one is pretty easy, because that's really what it takes, is in order to not have as big of a presence in a traditional learning environment, a classroom, you need to be able to extract that need to another nearby space. And that's critical that it is nearby. The second piece is reducing the casework. And these are things that are a little bit beyond your ability to change quickly, but an awful lot of classrooms around the world have spent an awful lot of space and money on built-in cabinets. And they tend to fill up with lots of things, including stacks of colored paper that have never been used over 30 years. And often make it very difficult to find the resources that you need. So replacing that with something as simple as a shared storage closet with floor-to-ceiling shelving gives you a whole new bit of space within your learning environment to use differently. The third one is to shift the technology and share it. And we've been in classrooms where a smart board is installed over a whiteboard, which is installed over a chalkboard, maybe over a 100-year period. And yet, what that means is that that interactive surface is on the short wall, traditionally in a classroom, and many students have a very great distance from that. And so a simple change is just, let's find the long wall that we can put that technology on. And there's some really great things that you can do where an entire wall surface, 10 feet high, 30 feet long, so 3 meters high by 10 meters long, could be made interactive with a device about the size of a cell phone. And now every young learner has great proximity to that, and you're no longer limited by the proportions of a traditional device. The other piece of shifting that technology is to also think about placing it out in an extended learning area. And so there may be a charging cart with 20 laptops or tablets on it. And those devices are the ready availability of any young learner. And yet you don't need to have absolutely every student having access to technology throughout the entire day. Then the fourth principle is to just count up the seats. I've been in classrooms where people have said, there's no flexibility in this room. And I ask a few simple questions like, well, how many young learners are in here? And they'll say, well, 20, 25. And I count the seats, and there are 30 to 35 spots to sit. So simply just purging the room of excess seating, I think, can build all kinds of wonderful flexibility. It is important that you have a combination of high and low and hard and soft. So don't just purge all the soft furniture out of there. Be thoughtful about the general proportion of each of those. I've also worked with Montessori schools where only a third of the students have a spot to sit. There's an assumption that you should be up and moving or down on the floor or actively learning, and that we don't necessarily need to provide a seat for actually absolutely everybody. The last principle I call change the scene. There's an image here of me and a great friend of mine rotating a stage set that we built 35 years ago. And it's an experience that I've had of building scenery that has made me think that we ought to be able to change our learning environments as easily as a group of stagehands can change the scene in a professional setting. By the way, those stagehands, whether they're college students or paid professionals, are doing that in the dark and in 45 seconds. So I'm almost certain that a group of learners can make these kinds of changes in full light in a very short time frame. So the essence of this set of images that you're seeing here is that it starts by being really thoughtful about the basic configuration of tables and chairs. And so not desks and chairs, but tables and chairs that can be shared and support working individually. So first of all is configured in a way that students can all see a presentation, and that could be led by a student or it could be led by an educator. And then make it very easy to make that transition to to quiet reflection. So you've just seen a presentation, 8 minutes long. You then simply rotate your head 90 degrees and spend some time thinking about what you just saw, maybe writing some notes. The second piece is to rotate your head another 90 degrees to your neighbor and share your observations with your neighbor. You didn't have to change the furniture to do any of those things, as well as not to do the next thing, which is to have a whole group conversation at each table. You lean into the center of the table to have that conversation. Again, didn't need to change the furniture. The step beyond that would be if you have a two-dimensional project that you're working on, and I have lots of those in the queue if you ever want to learn more about those. But a two-dimensional project, again, can be done by a group at a table, haven't had to move the furniture. But a key piece here is that the educator needs enough space to get up and move around and check in with every group frequently throughout that effort. The same thing could be true of a three-dimensional project that maybe has a more active learning component to it. And this is maybe the first time the furniture really moves in the room. And again, you just take those same table groups and push them to the side, as illustrated in the diagram. And that takes less than 30 seconds. Every team member knows where their parts and pieces are headed, and they just kind of reconfigure the tables at the edge of the space. There also is a need for hybrids. Not everything always works in one configuration or another, and so there may be times where some kids are working at the edge of the room and some kids are still working where they started the day, and there's been some space cleared to allow them to work as a group. If you have tables on casters and chairs on casters, it's very easy to draw a group of chairs together and make a big circle when that's important. The acoustics of that can sometimes be a little challenging if the circle gets a little too large. But that supports, again, whole group conversation in addition to all the other configurations that you've just seen. The other piece about moving the furniture to the edge and opening up the room is that it doesn't just support that whole group conversation, but it supports celebrations of learning. And this could be your neighbors, your teacher peer coming over with their young learners to interact with you. It could be an open house setting where you have many more people in the same space. But if you take something simple like a set of storage units on casters and you pull them away from the edges and you place them in the center face to face, so all of that debris disappears, and now you have this 5-sided cube ready to run with the display of student work. You're ready for your your peers to drop by or for an open house setting with plenty of space to move around. You can use the other seating within the room to have stations around the room where learners can explain to each other or to their parents or community what's happening in that space. Inevitably, everyone tells me, yeah, but we have to test, and we have these high stakes test situations, and students can't be sharing furniture for that. Well, again, even if you have tables, well, 2 students can sit at a table without interrupting one another. And if you need to bring in additional tables, simply bring them in from an extended learning area or borrow them from one of your peers. But it doesn't need to be a permanent situation, which really ultimately limits the use of the space. Another request is often, well, what about big seminar settings? And again, you could bring in a few more tables if you really felt like all of your learners had to sit around a single table. But again, be aware of the acoustics that with greater and greater distance, young people have to and adults as well, need to shout in order to be heard at a conversational level at the other end of the table. That's not very desirable. So maybe you think about, what if we have a small seminar while also other groups of students are working independently elsewhere in the same room? So throughout this, I've been sharing some essential questions, and I hope that you'll chew on those as you think about each of these principles and how you might implement them in your own experience. And again, I look forward to talking to you either live in person or in a video call and learning what you have discovered.